All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to another week of Blueprint for Peak Performance. Ask me anything. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Brandy Smith. I'm the founder of Perfect 10 Physical Therapy and Performance Training. Oh, can you unscreen share right now for a second?
Oh yeah, sorry.
Carrie's ready. She's
I'm ready.
sorry, I was on another screen, so I didn't see. Welcome, everyone. So again, welcome to a new Blueprint for Peak Performance. Ask me anything. If for those of you that don't know me, I'm Brandy Smith. I'm the founder of Perfect 10 Physical Therapy and Performance Training, as well as Perfect 10 PT Academy, which is online courses for coaches, parents, and athletes. And I'm a former two-time collegiate national champion gymnast who in my career had my own struggle with eating and fueling. And boy, do I wish I knew these things. And so through that process and through becoming a physical therapist because of multiple injuries, which also had part of their relations to nutrition and what we now call relative energy deficiency in sport. But I did not know that at the time. Um, so through that experience, I became a physical therapist and I work with athletes all the way from recreational all the way up to Olympic level athletes. And we do these every week so that we can all learn and grow. And I've been really blessed to work with USA Gymnastics and Texas Gymnastics since like 2008. And so I have all kinds of fun friends and colleagues that have amazing specialties and are really, really good at what they do. So we have a lot of different people come in for various different things. Sometimes we talk about anything from anything performance related. So maybe it's mindset, maybe it's dealing with emotions, maybe it's autonomy, maybe it's coaching techniques, gym culture, you name it. We kind of cover everything from flexibility to strength training to cycling your athletes throughout the year, to goal setting to nutrition. So I'm super excited today to have one of my colleagues here, Kerry Bair. She is the gymnast RD on Instagram. Kerry is also a former gymnast and registered dietitianist. So she's going to give a better interview, a better intro of all of her stuff. But we're here to talk about nutrition, off season on point. So what does our off season nutrition look like, and how can we get ready? Because believe it or not, we are always creating a foundation for the next. We're loving and staying in the present for those of us that have dealt with our mindset and we're working on all those things. We're loving and staying in the present of where we are while we're getting ready for the next. So I'm going to have Kerry come on in and get going. She's got a cool thing for us. Kerry, go ahead and do a little intro about you and we'll go from there.
Yeah, hi everyone. Sorry you got a sneak peek of this before, but thank you again, Brandy, for inviting me in. I think this is the third or fourth time now I've been inside your community, which is so awesome and so wonderful. And I definitely recognize some familiar faces as well as some new faces. So just a quick introduction about me. As Brandy said, I am a registered dietitian, and I am a newly board certified specialist in sports dietetics. So that's very exciting for me. Don't like to toot my own horn, but that
Congratulations.
was very
No.
exciting. And I've been working with gymnasts and their families and those who fuel them and feed them and support them for almost 10 years now. And really just making sure that gymnasts are understand what it means to fuel their body like the athletes so they can not only perform their best in the gym, but make sure we are growing and recovering and repairing and just like Brandy said, building that really, really strong foundation. And similar to Brandy, I myself was also a gymnast. I was a level 10 and a collegiate gymnast. I also coached gymnastics for about 10 years as well. So I've got a lot of really unique perspectives on the sport and what it means to kind of feed and fuel our gymnasts. So, what I want to talk about today a little bit is transitioning to the off season, and not like gymnastics really has an off season, right? But what we're kind of noticing and what we're seeing in this post competition season training phase and what that means in terms of fueling and nutrition. If you've listened to me talk before, I always start with kind of the basics and the background just to make sure not only that everybody understands and is on the same page, but this is such a good reminder because with nutrition, if you're doing the basics and the foundational stuff right, you're like 90% of the way there. but most gymnasts will find out are really not. So that's kind of what I want to talk about. So the slides I'm going to talk off of tonight or today are from a larger masterclass that I taught last weekend. I don't think we need to talk about every single point that I went over, but I want to kind of go through some of this and really focus on what we're doing now in this phase. So kind of just jumping.
Before you get in,
Yeah.
can we have you guys put in the chat? We like to have a little interaction. Can you
Oh
guys
yeah, of
put in
course.
the chat what you are, if you're a coach and what levels you're coaching, if you're an athlete or you're a parent of an athlete, like what level athlete do you have with you? I think I saw an athlete possibly present in the back seat of a car there, which is great. This is what this stuff's for. So just drop it in the chat so we have an idea as we go. Yeah, so I see coaches, XL, bronze through diamond. Um, I know we have a couple other coaches, recreational athletes. We have a director in here of yeah, coach pre-team to elite. I know we also have a director in here that is for multiple rec programs as well as competition programs from Excel all the way to USAG developmental DP stuff. So yeah, so drop in if you can a little bit about yourself, and then Kerry, continue on. We'll
Yeah, I
also kind of
appreciate
get
it.
your
And
input.
I will just talk and talk and talk. So if you guys have questions, Brandy, if there's stuff you want to chat more about, I'd rather be discussional than just talk the whole time, but I can and I do. So feel free to interrupt me. But what I want to kind of start out with is just setting the scene, right? This time of year and really every competition season and every gymnastics year, I feel like it starts off the same, right? Season ends, feels like it kind of takes weeks to just catch up, right? Everything hurts. You spend that start of your off season, your upgrade season, your play time just trying to get back to normal. And nobody really likes to do that, but it's part of the process. Right? Summer comes around, it's always lots of fun. We're working new skills. We're working really hard to get better and faster and stronger. But then summer always seems to go by just a little too fast, right? Fall rolls around and it's a struggle to get those new skills to kind of materialize. Meet season sneaks up on us. We're never quite ready. We never quite settle into the season. And it's like there's always something that hurts. We put it off until the end of the season. But it makes it hard to train, right? It's hard to do the skills that you really want to do and compete the way that you want to compete. So if this kind of resonates with you, or even as a coach, right, you see this, I've seen a lot of heads shaking. Like, if this resonates with you, let me know in the chat for sure. Um, and so often, right, for can we get out of Reds in postseason? Yes, absolutely. I'm gonna mention Reds because I know we've got some new people in here, but yes, that is the time. For so many gymnasts, I know it feels like during summer we've got so much to do, and everybody wants to do everything right, right? You create that perfect schedule of, how many days a week and hours and times to get everything in that you want to. You've got athletes working super hard. They're pushing through their assignments, they're conditioning, they're strength training in the gym, out of the gym. They're doing the PT, the prehab, the rehab. They're doing the mental performance, right? You've got tons of families that are even trying to figure out, okay, what's that extra thing that we need to do or we need to incorporate into our super busy schedule, our limited time, right? I think I see it all the time. The massage, the chiropractor, the dry needling, the red light therapy, the every 6 months it's something new. But at the big picture, it feels like something just it's not adding up. And it's not adding up until we think about nutrition. Um, and when we're thinking about nutrition, right? Just so everybody is on the same page, right? We know that nutrition, the way we fuel our body, the amount, right, getting enough energy into our body and enough nutrients really is the foundation for every single thing that we want our gymnasts to be able to do in and out of the gym, right? It is the foundation for growth and development, for the energy that they're able to give and have during practice, right? It's the foundation for the strength they're building, the endurance, the skill building. It is the foundation for their brain power, their focus, their mental toughness, injury prevention, recovery, staying healthy, all of these things. It is the foundation, right? Because our gymnasts really, really need a ton of energy, right? Just to stay alive, to grow, to develop, to be able to run your body and run your body systems and do everyday activities. And then on top of that, we add the 3, 4, 5 hours a day in the gym and the PT and the strength training, and then making sure that we're actually able to recover and be able to get better and faster and stronger. And that is a lot of energy and it's a lot to keep up with. And I always share this statistic because it's just so mind-blowing and it's eye-opening. But what we're seeing is that the majority, right, 3 out of 4 competitive gymnasts are not getting enough nutrition, right? Overall, they are not putting in enough energy into their body to support not only what's happening in the gym, but things like recovery, injury prevention, growth, development, and even normal system function. And what we start to see is that the body has to sacrifice things, right? It slows down or it sacrifices things like growth, things like development, muscle mass, recovery, not injury prevention, but right, reducing our risk of injury. So because our bones and our tendons and our ligaments are strong. So all of this to say, and Brandy mentioned, and I think we're having a little bit of a conversation about this in the chat, but what this is really referring to is a concept called REDS, or relative energy deficiency in sport. And I will never not give a nutrition talk and mention this because everything that we're talking about in the sport of gymnastics, whether it's performance based, whether it's the injury conversations, the mental performance conversations, all of it boils down to, does the body have enough energy to do the things that you want to do, right? We know we need a good PT plan and we need a good strength plan to get stronger, but we could be doing all the right things. And if our body does not have enough energy, we know that every single system of the body can suffer because of that. So whether it is our skeletal system, our muscles, our tendons, our ligaments, our brain, our mental health, right? Even things like our hormones and our immune system and our GI system, every single system and function of the body does not work right when it is overfueled or underfueled. And that is happening, of course, big picture, right? Over time, but as well as kind of in the acute phase. You guys all know that when a gymnast runs out of energy at practice, they're not in a good mood, right? They're not performing as well, right? So even in the short term, we know that our athletes are not at their best when they are underfueled. And we're all kind of coming out of this competition season phase right now, right? During competition season is really when we start to see this energy deficit, right? The amount of the gap between what our body is using and what we're putting in, we see that it builds. It really does build during competition season as a result of the increased intensity in practice, adding on competition days, right? We're having less rest days, less recovery days. We're all just overall busier and more stressed. And that's just moving the target. And then we had a whole conversation, and I know Brandy recorded it, I think earlier in the season, specifically about this and about why this happens during season. But it's good to set the stage, right? It's why we're all feeling, physically drained, even if mentally we're excited to be in the gym in kind of a post competition season world. The body needs to catch up. But in a sport like gymnastics, where there is no off season, right? You might get a couple of days off or something like that to mentally recover and physically recover after a season, but then we dive right back in. Um, and it's not like gymnastics training during the summer is all that different, right? It's not. Many gyms and many gymnasts are training either the same number of hours or more hours in the summer than they were during the year, during the season. So this nutrition stuff, right? It doesn't get any less important, right? Doesn't it doesn't really change, right? We want to think that we have kind of a big periodized approach to nutrition throughout the year and through the summer. And yes, there are absolutely some nuances and those sorts of things to nutrition. But for most of our gymnasts, the biggest challenge is always going to be getting them enough, right? Getting them enough nutrition to keep up with the demands of training. And I know we want to always talk about the fancy stuff, the little nuances when it comes to nutrition. But by and large, right, I know we've got a mix here of coaches that are seeing this in their gyms and with their families, as well as parents and athletes. But by and large, right, we expect that our athletes they're not doing the basics very well, right? They're underfueled.
I mean, like
Hey,
I
oh,
love when you said the 3 to 4, 3 out of 4, because that latest research was 90% of
yeah.
athletes. Like 90% of athletes are
Hmm.
underfueled. And so I think it is, and it is interesting, though, one concept being getting it in the body. Like that's the first step and the first step in problem. And then the second being absorption. Like maybe they are actually eating it, but their gut health is not actually
Hmm.
absorbing it too. I think Michael had a question. Is that okay if he pops in?
Yeah, go for.
Yeah, well, I've been battling this forever. I got in trouble with a nutritionist who was probably way above her game way back when, and basically was what you're describing now as Reds way back. That our kids were
Mhm.
well under fueled, and trying to get them to do that. How much do we need to increase? Like, say the average is 1,200 calories in the training post, like we're bumping up everything. We're bumping up strength, we're bumping up skill level, we're bumping up everything. And most people don't change their diet. And it's bad enough in the competition season trying to get enough food into them. So, how many
Mhm.
calories would we have to go up to?
So first of all, I want you to, did you hear him say 1,200 calories or how much we need to
I
bump it up
laughed
to
at that.
1,200? So first, can you please tell Michael and below his
Yeah.
mind how
Hmm.
much an average, can we just say, because I've heard you say multiple times a 16-year-old male gymnast, and that's like
There.
3,000,
Oh, that's
3,300
more.
calories.
Yeah.
That's 3,000,
So,
3,300. But can you
mhm.
also do like the average, let's just say
Yeah.
10 to 12-year-old female gymnast?
Absolutely. So yeah. So I mean, especially as a coach, right? I think we have to remember to we wanna talk calories, but calories is going to be very unique, right? How many calories or how much energy somebody needs is going it's not a blanket, right? There's a lot of factors that go into what a person is eating and how much they're eating. And right, some of it feels really cut and dry on paper and we want it to be, but a lot of it is very very nuanced. And there's just a lot of factors that go into it. But absolutely, I see gymnasts, male, female, artistic, tramp and tumbling, rhythmic, right, all the things. Um, so if we're talking about like again, this is going to be very size dependent and level dependent because what I'm going to feed a 10-year-old Excel Gold is going to be very different than I'm feeding a level 10 tops athlete, just because of the time and intensity I know that they're spending in the gym. But
Can you do like an average kid?
mhm,
I know that those tops kids,
yeah.
that's a
Oh
smaller
yeah.
percentage. Can you
Oh,
do
I
like an
know.
average training schedule, average female,
Yeah.
10 to 12 years old?
For sure. Yeah. 10 to 12 years old, if they're training 3, 4 hours a day, 3, 4 times a week, 5 times a week, usually I'm finding them to need, again, depending on size, somewhere around 2,500 calories a day. You get up to a 16-year-old female level 10 training 20 hours a week, they're going to be above 3,000 calories a day. get a male athlete in there, a 16-year-old level 10 male athlete training 15, 20 hours a week is going to go up to, 4,000 calories a day. And the sport of gymnastics in itself, and again, everybody is unique and everyone is different, but the predictive equations tell us that the sport of gymnastics usually burns somewhere between 250 to 500 calories per hour. Again, I know that's a pretty big range, but that kind of encompasses the spectrum of what you're seeing in the gym. So, right, just keeping that into
I just
perspective.
want anyone who just got their mind blown to put a big Y in the chat, because I just want you guys to tell me how many of your athletes, level 10 females, are getting 3,000 calories. I personally, in college, when finally was looked at with nutrition, was
Mm-mm.
barely getting 1,300, and we were just trying to get me to hit 2,000. And that was
Yeah.
freaking hard. I had to drink like protein shakes on top of everything to try and figure it out. That was the answer. And my best season ever was when I did that. I was like,
Mhm.
it was crazy. And I'm not saying that's the answer for people. That's not what I'm saying.
No.
I'm just saying back then, like it was a struggle. It's a real deal struggle. So
Yeah.
so Brienne said, can you see their mind was so blown
Uh-huh.
that they actually don't remember now. So can you go back to because you did a good range. Can you go back
Mhm.
to the 10 and 12-year-old female and then the 60-year-old female, and then you also stated the 16 level 10 male. So start
Yeah.
and go through it again.
I will
You need
say
a
it
slide
again.
that just has this.
I do. And honestly, it's because I don't honestly usually talk a ton of calories just because I think it's easy to get stuck in the nuances, right? And it's distracting and it's not super actionable. I can put
I love
together a
this.
graphic. I can put together a graphic for you, but again, right, when we're talking like in the weeds, we're talking behavior change, what we want someone to do, right? If we say, I want you to eat 500 calories before coming to practice, right? That's a totally made up thing. But what does that mean? What does that look
Yeah,
like? What does that entail?
I honestly think that what Dawn and them are wanting, because their mind is kind of blown, is they
Mhm.
actually want a picture of like how much food is
Here,
that
you know
like
what?
do you have one? Carrie has lots.
Oh, I do. I
She's so
do.
organized, by the
Can
way.
I unshare my
Yeah,
screen? It's
unshare
not
for a
in this
second.
slide deck, but
We'll
it's in
chat
a
for a little
different
bit.
slide deck.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, so I can repeat those ranges, right? So right, a 10, 12-year-old, maybe Excel, late compulsory, low level optional sort of athlete, right? I find them needing somewhere like 2,500 give or take calories a day. You bump that up to a 16-year-old level 9, level 10 training 20 hours a week, they're going to go above 3,000. Um, when when we're thinking about a male gymnast, we're thinking like
At level 10, male gymnast, 16
over
years old,
4,000.
more
Over
than
th
4,000 calories.
Yeah. Let me
And I
see.
think the other hard part is a lot of the parents and coaches in here, though minus Sean maybe, is
Hmm.
we are of the generation that was taught low cal, low whatever,
Hmm.
calorie counting. And so this is the thing, and this is also the dicey area that I would love to hear
Yeah.
your opinion on, is we need to know how much they're eating, and we need
Hmm.
to know how much is 4,000 calories and how much is
Yeah.
300 calories. What does that
Hmm.
look like? But at the same time, I don't want and I'm going to say this from personal
Hmm.
experience, who had an eating issue coming out straight up clean. I had, a restricted calorie eating issue, especially in junior high when I was being weighed in by coaches on Saturday in my sports bra and in bikers. And I was
Oof.
only adolescent in the gym. Everyone else was in elementary. So I had a changing body in a gym that was weighing me, that then also gave me a lot of consciousness
Hmm.
about what I was eating. And so my only answer was to restrict for me.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I got through all that. I now love and see food as fuel, but those remnants remained because I
Hmm.
never really understood until I later had a medical issue that required some medical treatments, which then kind of killed everything in my body. And I needed to do nutrition as part of my healing. And so I found
Hmm.
food as a healing source as well. Not to say anyone, just to like caveat this, I'm not saying don't go to a doctor and get medicine, please do. But I used food as a nutritional. And at
Hmm.
that point, I was in a healthier place. And I did like weigh my food and see the size of the things, go, oh, and we just spent 2 weeks. She goes, look, 2 weeks, 2 weeks. I want you to get an idea, maybe four at max, what it is that you're eating and how much you need, because it's
Yeah.
then you realized. And it was a mind-boggling opening experience
Hmm.
to go, oh, this much chicken is actually this much stuff, and I actually need this many of this like throughout the day, and
Hmm.
this food is more calorically dense, and how can I get more in, because I wasn't used to having a big full stomach. So anyways, it wasn't until like I was in my 30s at this point. I was 30. I was right at 30 when it happened. And so how do you address this and get with parents, coaches, and
Yeah.
athletes, like, because they need to know how much
Hmm.
they need, but
Right.
without becoming, because if I had done this, well, clearly I was doing it unknowingly and or knowingly, where I was calorie counting and cutting everything, which is so not helpful. So how do you go about promoting this understanding of like this, how much you need? And we do kind of need the numbers to give a broad
Hmm.
idea. And I do also understand, because I know Kerry, she works with people, they give this thing, and then she's constantly saying, well, how do you feel at rotation 2? How are you feeling at
Hmm.
rotation 3? How are your injuries healing? How are you sleeping when you wake in the morning? Am I right? Like, these are, you're
Yes.
checking in with these
Yes,
children.
right. And again, this is why I as a dietitian exist, because if you took this on as a coach, like it's too many things. It's
So,
it's too much for you. And I understand that. And that's why I exist. So I've pulled up a different slide and I hope this gives a little bit more context. So again, I don't talk a ton of weighing and measuring. I will, I'll show this slide more to parents because I think it's eye-opening. And usually I'll talk about this slide after I've talked about having a fueling schedule. So I think again, where the portions make more sense when, like, if someone was eating 3 times a day, the amount that's on their plate is obviously going to be very different than someone that's eating 6 times a day. And for a lot of our gymnasts, I am encouraging them. And how, right? Brianna asked, how in the world do we get 4,000 calories into a 16-year-old male athlete? Trust me, sometimes I look at the numbers and it makes me twitch a little bit
well, because
too.
she even said she's struggling with 1800, like, and
Hmm.
I'm guessing she's also probably
It's
talking about
wild.
herself,
It's
you know.
wild. I mean, we all know that increased physical activity increases appetite for most, not for everybody, but for most, versus, right, if we're not training 20 hours a week, you're obviously not going to be as hungry as somebody that is. But usually I'll encourage gymnasts to have a fueling schedule, and that is going to encompass usually 3 or 4 meals and 2 or 3 snacks throughout their day, right? If we don't give them enough opportunities, there's no way you're going to get 3,000 calories into a 16-year-old, or, it's just not possible. And again, these are kind of the ranges. And when I work with athletes, I always work with them individually. I work with them one-on-one. So I'm giving them, again, I'm still usually giving them ranges, but again, it's more specific, tailored to their needs. Um, but again, I'll talk in, sometimes it's helpful for something like protein to see how many grams you need. Sometimes it's helpful to see portion sizes. Again, I like what Brandy said, and for the right athlete and for the right family, I do think it's helpful like once or twice, right? If we're saying, okay, like what does 1 cup of fruit look like, right? What does 2 cups of pasta look like? Like get your bowl that you usually eat in, scoop it out, right? And see what it looks like in your bowl, in your container, right? Like have that. And then you don't have to do that every single time, right? Because it gets to be a lot. And nobody's got time for that. And we don't want anybody to feel like they have to do that, give or take. I always also say that this is a starting point. So if like an athlete is sitting down and they eat this food and they're still hungry, obviously we want them to eat more. And the opposite is true, right? If they're getting this and they're saying, oh my God, this is too much, can't eat all this, right? We want them to stop when they're full. And then of course we can tweak things. And something I say a lot is it's very strategic, and the way we feed our athletes and the way we feed our gymnasts does not always fit mainstream nutrition standards, right? Again, I don't always talk macronutrients, but a lot of times, right, if we're doing 3,000 calories in a day, sometimes that's going to look like, 450 grams of carbohydrates in a day. Like you cannot do that by eating brown rice and salad and vegetables, like big, big plates of that, because they're going to get full before they get enough energy and before they get enough calories. And um, so it looks different, right? It's got to be more strategic. We've got to find these really not just nutrient dense foods, because of course we want them to get nutrient dense foods, but we've also got to make sure they've got enough energy and energy dense foods alongside that. Because at the end of the day, if they're not getting enough and they're not getting enough energy, it's it's really, really hard and really, really tricky. So, does that give a little bit more context for you guys?
Does that help everyone a little bit? Pop in a yeah, pop in a Y if you're good, or if you want more, just pop in an M and we'll know in the chat that you want
Hmm.
more. One thing I've noticed with some of my athletes who are like, I have some athletes that get overwhelmed by how much food is put out that they need.
Hmm.
And they're like, no, 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 I'm full, I'm full, I'm full. And so I've had a couple athletes that I'm like, well, why don't you eat what you feel is full? And since you're so used to that, just like take a few minutes of breather and then reassess and see if you could have one more thing or
Hmm.
two more bites. And I had several athletes recently who were like, um, they were like, I didn't realize actually I was still hungry. I was like, were you just ready to move on to the next thing? And they're like, yeah.
Hmm.
Like in their mind, part of it's that perfectionist, keep going, always doing.
Yeah.
In their mind, they're like, okay, food is done. It's
Hmm.
time. I got something else to do. And they really hadn't officially like kind of checked in to see. And so they had kind of like falsely trained their body to think that they were full when they weren't really full. It was kind of interesting.
Hmm.
I've been seeing a lot of that. Do you see
Absolutely.
that? Do you see a lot of
Well,
that?
yeah, and I think we have to remember too that we're as gymnasts and gym
In a
coaches,
hurry?
we're not working with adults. We're working with young people who are not only, yes, they're high level athletes and doing things in other sports that are well beyond their years and well beyond their age, but as people, they're still developing their relationship with food, right? They're still learning their body and their body signals, and they don't always recognize hunger. They don't always recognize full, right? Like Brady said, they could be bored, they could be taste bored, they could just not have enough time, or they have a lot of conversations with kids and families just about recognizing hunger. Like I always ask them, I'm like, this might sound crazy, but how do you know you're hungry? Like what does your body say? And we kind of talk about the obvious and then some of the like less obvious, because they're not recognizing that, and they're not actually noticing when they're hungry until they're about to pass out. Like um so it's, again, it's very tough and it's very nuanced. um but the summer certainly brings up different challenges. We want to get them out of that cycle of reds, right? We want to That's the big goal. We want to get them out of the cycle of reds. We want to get them adequately fueled, and now is actually not a bad time for our gymnasts to add this to their I'll say plate, but like figurative plate, because they're not in school, right? They've got a little bit more capacity to be intentional about this and figure it out and learn it, so that when they do go back to school in the fall, it's not a huge thing and it's not a huge deal, right? So when we're talking about our gymnasts, if we want our gymnasts performing better and training better in the summer and beyond, right? Some of these are nutrition things, some of these I'm sure are things Brandy talks about all the time. But we've got to give them the chance to rest. We want to make sure that they are checking in with their doctor. I know a lot of them will have physicals around their birthday, but it's always a good chance, if possible, to get them in with their doctor, their sports med, just kind of have a post-season check-in sort of thing, check on those growth charts, like make sure that their body has continued to grow over season. Get them some blood work. Usually I'll recommend blood work for gymnasts, either 13 and up, or if they're kind of on that high level optional check, just to make sure that their body's reacting and responding appropriately to the workload, to the nutrition, what they're doing, right? Get all sorts of checkups and check-ins throughout the summer. Um, when it
I love
comes,
this checklist because like this is the best time. I always tell, I promote performance check-ins like with me for physical therapy and we do mindset check-ins. Like it's a whole kind of for nutrition. I'm not a full nutrition anything, but we do like basic stuff for help. But then I refer them all to you, and I bring them all to Kerry. Um, but this time of having a regular check-in, it's perfect to do so right after season, because all kinds of movement patterns and mental stuff has come up, and the nervous system's all heightened.
Hmm.
It's just good to have a nice reset. And some of the things here that you're talking about are like Maslow's hierarchy. They're the basic needs, right?
Hmm.
Like, this is a time when you should refocus on the basic needs, which is food,
Hmm.
water, and sleep, and the sense of
Hmm.
safety. So all of those four things, and by the way, all four of those things typically get disrupted throughout a very
Yeah.
stressful season. And so all four of those things then relate to injury, poor movement patterns, all the repetition that happens. Also, we get the physical side of it. So I love this
Hmm.
slide, because it is truly a time to check in each one of these tools. Like, where are we at sleep? Are we going to bed on time? What's our sleep hygiene look like? Because
Hmm.
sleep hygiene's gone out the window between traveling and also studying for exams. I got kids with finals right now. My
Hmm.
daughter just finished taking STAR, which is the
I was gonna
standardized
say we have
for
state
Texas,
testing.
all the state testing, and then the homework and all the stuff. So between that and training, right? Like, our sleep cycle just went out the window, and then we're rushing around all these different places. And depending on how well we've done with nutrition and food, again, that has probably gone off the wayside. And
Hmm.
as a human, it's okay that we've done that. Like, things teeter and totter, but I think it's important to have a check-in point. Like, I like those well checks. My daughter's well checks are right at the end of school year because of her birthday, but like, it's a great moment. Like, I love the year annual well check because it's on the calendar. Like,
Hmm.
it's a moment. So I love like the idea of, like, as a parent, let's do a check-in and kind of line up over the first 2 weeks to 3 weeks after season or the end of school, to where we just kind of check in. Like, and as a parent, you don't want to get overwhelmed and check in all these things in one day. Like, you're just going to kind of tick
Yeah.
tick them off of your check
Mhm.
off list.
Yeah. If you've got a couple weeks, right? I know it depends on where in the country you are, but I know school could be ending anywhere in the next week or two or in the next month, right? As things slow down, and even if these things don't necessarily happen even until the summer, like these are all things
Well, that's
that,
what I mean. Even the beginning of summer, like, you have
Mhm.
this window that you can kind of
Yeah,
get going.
for sure, for sure. So just kind of moving forwards again, like when we're talking about nutrition, as much as we want the fancy answer, right? We want the really cool, like, this is a superfood and they have to be eating this and we got to focus on this nutrient. By and large, the biggest nutrition priority is getting getting our gymnasts to eat and eat enough. Like, bottom line, the energy in, the calories in need to equal, if not exceed, the calories that they're expending, right, in a sport like gymnastics. And again, I mentioned before, a sport like gymnastics can burn 250 to 500 calories an hour, right? So if we've got an older gymnast training 4 hours a day, like, we got to get them a lot. And like I said, most are just not, they're not eating balanced meals, adequate balanced meals. They're not eating frequently enough, right? So as much as we want the really fun and cool and fancy answer, just like in the gym, right? If you don't spend time drilling like their handstand shape, right? Nothing else is going to end well at the end of at the end of the day. Um, and the same thing goes with nutrition. And what I'm always talking about and what I'm always preaching is going to be the performance plate. And this is a really helpful and a really appropriate model when we're talking about gymnasts and the age group. Because, like I said, we don't want to get into the weeds of calorie counting and weighing and measuring. But this is a really good visual blueprint for them to take a look at their plate and say, okay, like, what kinds of foods do I have on my plate? Because we want them getting a variety of different foods, right? Because different foods do different things for the body. They give us different things and they work together, right? I always like the analogy of building a house. The work that you're doing in the gym, right? The strength, the conditioning, the prehab, the rehab, right? That is your plans. That's your blueprint. Um, but the nutrition, those are the workers, the building blocks, and the tools, right? If we could have the most beautiful multi-million-dollar mansion planned out in our blueprints, but if we don't have workers that show up to work, or if they don't have any bricks, they forget their bag of tools, that house will never ever get built, right? So we can talk superfoods, we can talk vitamins and minerals and nutrients and those sorts of things all day long. But if our athletes are not eating carbohydrates, right, enough carbs for energy from grains, from starches, from fruit, right, if they're not eating enough protein to give their body the building blocks to build muscle, maintain muscle, repair, recover, grow, develop, if we're not getting them enough fats for energy, for fullness, for brain health, for hormone health, um, right at the end of the day, it's not going to make a huge impact. So this is really what I like to use and how I talk about kind of building meals and snacks is that we're going to build a performance plate and just right some real life examples of what this looks like or what this could look like. I am here for simple. I am here for fancy. I am not a like hoity-toity crunchy food person in the least. I am like, because I know everybody has a different level of cooking, capacity, groceries, time, all the things. I'm here for the simpler, the better. Like you can build a performance plate out of anything, right? You can do it at breakfast, at lunch, and at dinner. And for most of our athletes, this is the goal, right? Outside of like the practice window, which I'll talk about in a minute, this is the goal, right? That at a bare minimum, they can think about their breakfast and say, I had a grain, I had a fruit, I had something with protein and some sort of fat on my plate, right? At a bare minimum, that's going to get them a lot further, right? And then down the line, we can say, okay, you know what? You probably need to add another piece of toast, or you probably should upgrade that English muffin to a bagel, or you know what? That pasta meal looks really great. Like we've checked all the boxes, but you've got 90% pasta, 3 bites of salad, and 1 meatball. Like, can we shift that a little bit? That's a much easier shift than, okay, can we just get something from each section? And so that's kind of the basics. Um, the other thing I talked about before when I kind of showed the amounts is fueling schedules. And this gets thrown on its head haywire for our gymnasts in the summer, especially with practice schedules, whether you're going from nights to mornings, whether you're doing all day practices, practices that span the length of a meal, right, can get really, really tricky. But by and large, we want our gymnasts to be having a meal or a snack I usually say 3-ish hours. Like it doesn't have to be timed, it doesn't have to be on the dot, but using that frame and then thinking about their day, their schedule. Right now, this is kind of a school, right? Thinking about a school schedule, but even thinking about a summer practice that goes like, 9 to 1 or something like that, right? What has to happen to eat before they show up? What kinds of snacks, what kinds of hydration do we want them bringing during, right? Are they getting a lunch break, a snack break? Do we expect them to go straight through? What kinds of things are going to be helpful and optimal for whatever your gym does? And then thinking about what's happening after, right? Are they getting dropped off and they're fending for themselves while their parents are at work for the rest of the day, right? Do they know how to put together a lunch? Right? And I don't care what it is at the end of the day, right? But do they have the ability to put together a PB&J sandwich and grab a banana, like, or something like that to be able to fuel their bodies adequately, right? That is the bottom line, the basics for sure. Um, when we think about the summer, right, and making sure athletes are adequately fueled for the summer, once we get beyond the basics, we can get into a little bit of nuance. And I think that's going to depend again on the individual and what their goal was, like what they're trying to recover from. If they were just massively underfueled during season and everything's kind of out of haywire, like they're going to spend the summer really just getting a foundation under the belt. And if there's someone that's dealing with a lot of bone injuries and bone stuff, right, we might have to spend the summer really focusing on, getting them some sunshine, getting them some vitamin D, um, optimizing foods with calcium, right? Milk, cheese, yogurt, fortified non-dairy alternatives, leafy greens and nuts and seeds, and right, magnesium foods and potassium foods and those sorts of things. If we've got a lot of kids that are really struggling with endurance, right? I think the latest studies about like teenage girls with low iron, it's like shocking, even for general populations, it's like 30% or something like that. Like it's shockingly high. And we know as well that for our gymnasts and our athletes and especially our post-puberty females, that number is much higher. So again, that's where the blood work comes into play. But are we kind of making sure we're getting them enough iron-rich protein sources, meats, white beans, leafy greens and dried fruit, and as it's not just iron, right, but the supporting minerals as well, vitamin C and vitamin A and all those sorts of things. Right, it can feel like we get into the weeds, but again, if you've got a gymnast that is struggling, I know we've got coaches, we've got parents on here. If a lot of what I'm saying feels really challenging, or like this is me, this is us, the best thing is to get some one-on-one support, because we can talk nuance or we can talk generics all day long, and we can say like, you need to get more vitamin C in. But when I'm talking with you one-on-one, with a family one-on-one, um, we can identify, okay, these are the foods you like. Let's add that orange to lunch, right? Let's have some watermelon with dinner, or something like that, where we can actually talk more specifics and those sorts of things, um, which I know is a little tough, but I think that's important to remember. If we've got gymnasts that are really trying to spend the summer recovering, like their body's just really sore and really tired, right? We want to get them more fish, more seafood, omega-3 foods, blue and purple fruits and vegetables, blueberries and blackberries and cherries, and all those sorts of foods can really be helpful for soreness and recovery. And just thinking about what the goal is and how we're trying to take those next steps. Um, I know I talked for a while, so if there are questions, if there's more that you want to talk about, if there's more that you want to elaborate on, if we're talking about summer, I think I would be remiss to end our conversation today without mentioning hydration, but I don't want to go off on a new a new topic before we talk about that.
Yeah, anyone have any questions or want to share any struggles or concerns you're having with your athletes? Kerry is like a walking encyclopedia when it comes to nutrition, so we've got our year. Now's a great time before we move into hydration. Yeah, Sean, you have something? And then Dawn. Sean, did you have something? No. Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
no. Oh, I had my hand raised before, I guess, but if that's what you mean, but not any question in particular from nutrition at the
Okay.
moment.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
which I should though, because I'm very because because I'm very passionate about proper nutrition about this, but unfortunately I don't get to share I don't get to like share much nutrition topics with my athletes currently yet, except for like maybe a private lesson or something. So yeah.
That might be something that you look into with your gym, getting Kerry to come in and kind of breach the topic, because definitely every athlete needs to be talking about what they're putting in the body. That would be like a Formula One race car driver going out to the track and having no fuel and or no idea what to put in his car
Yeah.
to make it go. So I think it's a good conversation that your gym might look at having. She comes in and does group stuff like that. That might be a great thing that you could do. And she has something cool. So get the link at the end. Kerry has something cool at the end. I'm going to have Dawn and then I'm going to have Carla come in. Go ahead, Dawn. Carrie, can you unscreen share while Dawn unmutes?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say I can't hear you, Don.
Hold on. I'm going to mute you and then I'm now go now I asked you to unmute. See if that works. Did it kick it on you, Dawn? No, I can't hear you. No. no. Carla, come in while Dawn figures it out. Dawn, if you need to come out and come back in, that's cool. Carla, come on in with your question. And Dawn, if you can't get your thing working, just put it also in the chat and I'll read it.
I guess I probably maybe address. I mean, I know it's more of it, but I had male athletes. So I'm assuming they differ than I guess the female athlete. I know that I have a college athlete that probably needs to hear about this so that he's lacking some ring strength. So I'm assuming that's kind of protein type stuff. But I mean, I guess finding the way to balance them, as far as in like the girls, like with the Starbucks, and they get full on like their Starbucks drinks and that kind of thing. Oh, you can't hear me?
Oh, I can.
No.
I
Okay.
was waiting for you to finish your
that's for
thought.
Dawn.
No.
Yeah, you keep going.
So I guess if I'm going with the athletes that I coach specifically, I think sometimes they fill up with like Starbucks drinks, that kind of thing. So then they're not hungry, but then mid practice, an hour into practice, I'm sure they crash, and then probably go home and dabble with food because they probably missed, I don't know.
Starving.
Yeah, or probably missed like the family dinner or that kind of thing. I guess, what is your recommendation when it comes to like, I guess, limiting that? Or I guess, how would you approach a parent as far as in like, because the parents buy it?
Yeah. I mean, I always come from an educational lens, and especially when we're talking about kids and teens, I never want to tell them that they can't have something unless it is like outright dangerous. Which, caffeine, not great, but that's another conversation. But I think especially like you all know in your gym, right? If you've got a bunch of little kids and you sit them in front of the trampoline and then say, "Oh, wait, I gotta go grab that mat," don't jump. What are they gonna do? Like as soon as you walk away, they're bouncing, they're jumping. The more you tell someone no, like you can't do this, you can't have that, the more they're going to want to do it. And then the more they're going to do it in secret. Like they're going to hide it from you. They're not going to show you. They're not going to tell you about it. So it's very nuanced. But when it comes to nutrition, I never say, like, don't do this. Like, you can't have that. That's why I really, again, I like to go back to the plate model, and I really like to educate about what different foods on the plate give them and do for their body. And then I'll have that conversation like, okay, think about your pre-practice meal. Okay, right. You want to have a grain for energy. You probably want some fruit. You probably want a little protein, right? What are you having? Okay, you're going to Starbucks and you're getting a pink drink and a cookie, right? Or a pink drink. What boxes do we check and what should we add? Right? That's always my favorite question, right? What can we add? Because that way we're not taking anything away. But then if they're net recognizing, oh, I'm too full to eat my, protein box or my banana. Oop, did I freeze? I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Oh no, my picture froze, but I'm glad you can still hear me.
Yeah.
Right. So, oh, I'm too full to eat these things. Oh, maybe I don't need the grande, right? Maybe I can get they don't call it small at Starbucks, but
A
you know what I'm
tall.
talking about.
Call it a
That's all.
tall.
I'm not a coffee drinker, so I don't ever go to Starbucks. But so like that sort of mindset, or even again, I had a conversation. I think this is a really kind of insightful way, and I think it gives a lot of perspective. I had a parent come to me that was very concerned about the nutritional quality of the food that her gymnast was eating. And like so many parents, right? She wants her gymnast to just eat healthier when like again that doesn't necessarily mean anything, and that was a really hard concept for her 13-year-old to grasp. And her thing was I come home from practice and I make a box of Easy Mac and I eat the whole box, right? And that's my meal, and I go to bed and that's it, right? Obviously mom would have loved to see something more nutrient dense, but kid did not want to budge on the mac and cheese, right? So didn't even mention it. But we learned about the plate and we talked about it and said, okay, Tell me about your meal, right? What do you have? When you have a box of mac and cheese, what boxes are checked? She's like, grains and fats. I was like, great, you got it. What's missing? She goes, protein and color. I said, okay. So if we're still going to have mac and cheese after practice, what are you going to add to that? She's like, you know what? We always have chicken in our fridge. I could add that. And I like peas and I like broccoli, right? If we've got that, I'll add that. I said, great. Mom came back to me a week later and she goes, you know what? I noticed she's only eating half a box of mac and cheese now instead of the whole box, right? And now she's getting chicken and she's getting broccoli, right? So from a standpoint, right, some people might say, oh, she's still eating Kraft macaroni and cheese. But for this athlete, we met her. We met her where she was at. We got that trust. We got that buy-in. And it's not like the mac and cheese negated the protein in the chicken, right? It didn't take away from the nutrients in the vegetables, but like it was kind of an everybody wins situation. So that like, what can I add mentality paired with a little bit of education, right? And helping them connect the dots of, oh, I'm noticing you're really tired right now, right? Or I'm noticing something, right? Your mood really changed halfway through practice. What's up? Right? And they can say, oh, I'm tired or this or that. And, I think we've got mostly coaches left, which, is fine. And as a coach, again, we don't really want to get into the weeds of nutrition with our athletes, and even asking them what they ate before practice can sometimes feel like a cross boundary. And we don't always want to do that. But like, did you eat before practice? Or did you feel your body before practice? And they might say, oh, I just had a pink drink, or I just had a coffee, or a Celsius, or an Alani, or whatever they're going to say. And that's when, as a coach, you can come in and say, oh, interesting. Do you think that could be a reason why you're super tired? Or I wonder if that caused your brain to run out of energy or crash. Right? Like sometimes they have to solve their own, they have to right, like solve their own problems without us telling them or giving them the answer. But that like thought process of them realizing that what they're doing is not working is really powerful.
I absolutely love what you just did. You totally took out the power out of the power struggle. You deflated the balloon that likes to continue to blow up about the don't do this, eat that, don't eat this, that stuff. And also I love how you gave the athletes autonomy. And so in that a process of giving them autonomy and asking them very valid questions for them to ponder, you're giving them autonomy just with those questions, which we've all talked about how the research shows that this is the best way. Even we've had other coaches come in. Anthony Lowe came in and talked about experiential learning. This is an experiential learning. And I've learned this, especially with teenagers, until they experience running out of fuel and you help them define,
Mhm.
like, is it possible that you're, like empty? Like, did you drive your car out from school and forget to fill up the tank? And is that possible? Do you think that's happening? Like, what do you think is happening? You tell me what's going on inside your body. When you give them these questions, I love because you're giving them an experience and they start to go, oh, this is what my body feels like when I'm out of fuel. And
Yeah.
when they start eating, like, oh, this is what my body feels like when I'm fueled. Like I've done this with athletes here where parents they show up, they come from school, they're seeing me right before they go to a gym. And like dad was supposed to get the food in the car on the way to here so they could eat. And he went to the car, ordered it, took the drink, and then left and was like, and I got halfway through a training session where I'm letting her jumping this kid. And I was like, dude, you got nothing left. What's going on? I was like, have you eaten today? And he's like, no. And dad's
Mhm.
over there going, I was
Oh,
supposed
I
to get this
forgot.
thing. And then I go, would you like
Mhm.
something to eat right now? And he's like, yeah. I said, why don't we? So I got him a really quick, simple carb,
Yeah.
just something simple so he could get through what we were doing. And he was like, oh, yeah, yeah. Like I gave him like just a few
Mhm.
minutes and he was like, oh, yeah, now I'm feeling better. I
Mhm.
go, that was your body on empty. This is your body
Mhm.
on some fuel, just a quick carb, right? And I said, but you're about to go to 4-hour training. So I would
Go
highly
eat.
recommend that you guys, even if you're late to practice, it's going to be
Mhm.
better to go get some food in his body,
Mhm.
than to start.
100%.
So I
And
love,
most gymnasts don't realize how bad they actually feel until they start feeling better.
Yeah.
Like I think it's honestly one of the most impactful things when I work with people, like gymnasts one-on-one especially. Like, I'll talk to them at the beginning. They're like, I get a little tired here. This kind of isn't great. And then we'll make a few changes and, they start to see that immediate, like, oh yeah, I feel better. But then like every once in a while, without fail, right, something happens. Like they overslept, right? They forgot their lunch, right? Something happens and they go about their day and they're like, I didn't realize how bad I actually was until I saw the other side. So
Yeah.
they're like, I'm never doing that again. And like, sometimes we have to let them learn with the natural consequences, but um that's even really powerful for the younger kids too, right? They know when they're tired, like they know when their brain just can't like can't brain anymore, or they're like, my arms are not strong enough, or you have the kid that's like terrified to do a new skill because they think they're going to collapse or their bodies can't hold them, or like they recognize, and if we can help lead them to like the solution and something different, sometimes like that is really powerful and really eye-opening. And Dawn, I see your question
Yeah.
in the chat,
Let me
and
read
I
the
think it's going to
question.
be a perfect lead in.
Yeah, I'm going to read the question. The other thing I have athletes also talk about is heavy. Their arms or legs will feel heavy.
Hmm.
And so I've said, well, is it possible that you don't have enough fuel, enough
Energy.
energy, right? And I was like, what if when your arms feel heavy, if you went and actually did one of those, quick fast snacks, like the quick carbs, and just see
Hmm.
how you feel. And a lot of times they feel that it is that differentiate. I think especially with nutrition, also with chronic pain, gymnast wrist, back pain with bridges, pain in the ankles with short landings. Like it's the same thing until they feel that it so gradually comes on that it becomes what they think is their norm. And their brain kind of just tries to ignore it, kind of. And until they feel the stark difference of not having pain, having energy, they don't have a reference point, especially early on when they're young and it's their first experience. Okay, so Dawn this is going to be our last question. We're going to wrap it up from here. And I will let Kerry, I'm sure she'll drop in something about hydration because she has to, and I can feel it. She's dying. So how is the best way to encourage proper nutrition for the gymnast with their
Hmm.
parents? I've sent emails in the past,
Yeah.
examples, proper sleep, why and how much, etc., but
Hmm.
not sure how sure most parents. She said 10 read the email, 2 put it into practice, and 3 think about it long term. She goes, I'm thinking maybe a great handout with graphics that can post on their fridge and refer
Hmm.
to as a shopping or meal planning or packing snacks,
Yeah.
etc. Yeah. So what you got for us? And I'm gonna guess
Dawn, I
has
wish
some of
I
this
wish
for
you
you.
were at National Congress for me last year, because this was literally my lecture. I gave a lecture at National Congress called "Taking a Team Approach to Nutrition," and I wish there was a recording of it. And I should do it. I should like do it live as a webinar one time, because it's so hard and it's so nuanced. But at the end of the day, like big picture, just like everything else, I mean, not unfortunately, not everyone is reachable. Not everybody is teachable. The topic of nutrition for a lot of families feels really personal. And when we bring it up, sometimes they feel like you're almost attacking their parenting, because it is so personal to so many families. Or, if we go in with expectations that they have to put their kid on a strict diet, or right, something like that, that like it goes in one ear and out the other, they don't even want to engage in it. From a long-term standard, I always find that the more we have these conversations, the more we talk about it, like the gears start to move, right? The more they hear it, the more they think about it, the more they see it, it starts to sink in. And honestly, it becomes normal, right? If we never talk nutrition in a gym setting, like, and then all of a sudden we bring it up, it's, oh, does coach think I have a problem? Do we have a problem? Am I fat? Am I doing something wrong? Am I bad? Is this like it with nutrition, it's especially with teenagers, right? It's like, oh, it could be really terrifying. But um sometimes just even, and again, that this is kind of a very big picture long-term solution, but we've got to start from the beginning, right? When you onboard families onto your pre-team, and like you hand them that toolbook, and or the onboarding book, like it should be right behind, okay, show them up to, get them to practice on time in a leotard with their hair pulled back. Like, it should be normalized from the very, very beginning. And again, I know we've got a lot of coaches in here, and exactly what you mentioned, I have exactly that. I put together um what's called the Fuel Gymnast Team Toolkit. So as a gym, you can get access to basically my entire library of handouts and resources. So I know, like, a lot of you I saw take pictures of that slide that had like the plates on it. So there's like fueling guides in there. So if parents want to know, like, what do I feed my kid before practice, right? There's like a nice PDF packet, and it kind of talks about, okay, right, if if they've got 3 hours, if you've got 1 hour, if you're picking them up from school and dropping them at the gym in 10 minutes, like, here's the types of food, here are some examples, right? Not you have to pick from these foods, but like some samples and examples. And I think I'm up to like almost 30 resources in there now. And, I've seen teams use it in all different sorts of ways, whether it's hand it out to parents, kind of delve it out a little bit at a time. Even things like posting some of the stuff up, like if you've got a vending machine at the gym, right? And you have kids that go to it for mid-practice snacks. Right, you can put up one sign of like, what do I eat before practice, right? Look for these kinds of foods. Like, it does it. Formal education is great and helpful. And of course I do it. Of course I offer it. But the ones that are interested are going to be the ones that come and pay attention. And the ones that are not interested are, like, just like everything else, right? They're not going to show up. So it's hard, it's nuanced. If you're interested in handouts and packets and things they can hang on the fridge, I got you.
I love the idea of having something like even labeling in your vending machine 10-minute pre, like the red dots are all 10 minutes before workout, and the green dots are like mid-workout snack. And like, that's actually kind of cool, because that was my experience as well, as until you experience what to eat when, it's hard to remember. Like, it's so very applicable. I really like that. Also, Dawn said, I really think most parents have no idea just how underfilled their athletes are. I think that's 100% accurate. I think it was mind-boggling when the resources came out in even for me.
Hmm.
That first stuff came out, I knew people were underfueled like crazy. We used to call it nutritionally bankrupt. And I
Yeah.
always saw that because I saw that back before this was super researched and called REDS. And people were saying female athlete triad. And I'm like, yeah, but there's something else happening before that. We just kept calling
Hmm.
it nutritionally bankrupt, and they come in with multiple, growth plate issues in a year or two. And, but, I think what I would say to that about underfueling is that's where we need to have a lot of conversations. Like, we
Hmm.
need to really educate parents that this is a real deal thing, and it's
Yeah.
something to really look at because of the amount of growth needed in a growing athlete. And then she also said, maybe I can add a section for fueling, rest, and recovery, etc., into this season's team parent handbook. I think
Hmm.
that's a great idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree. And that's why you'll never hear me talking in a parent capacity, right? With gymnasts, I don't necessarily use the term REDS, but like, they all know what it feels like to be underfueled, and they know those signs and those symptoms. But parents, like, once they have like REDS on their radar, like, that's the most important thing. Because once you know that, you don't unsee it. And if they don't know, they can't seek out support. Right. Even so many pediatricians in the year 2025 will still say, oh, they're just so active. Like, it's okay that they're just going to be small, right? When their growth chart went like this. Um,
Yeah.
which, like, those kinds of things. And like you said, putting the pieces of the puzzle with injuries and that sort of stuff together. And it's that is the most important thing that parents, like, need to know, and they need to be aware of it, because even from that young age, right? They're probably not going to recognize it so much at 7 and 8 years old, because those kids are full of energy, and they're insane. But they're like a ticking time bomb, right? Under the scene, under the surface, when the bones aren't growing strong and the tendons and the ligaments aren't growing strong, how do we expect them to get through puberty on the other side into level 9 gymnastics and level 10 gymnastics and college gymnastics if they didn't build that foundation when they were 8.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And that's the thing that's really great is that we have an opportunity to train them early on, right?
Hmm.
Like that's the I think the coolest thing about coach is that you are a teacher. And this experiences that they're having through gymnastics and through you and then introducing them to people like Kerry and I, it changes their life forever. They're learning an experience with food. They're growing a relationship with food and their body. They're growing awareness of their body, what their needs are. That's like really, really awesome stuff to teach our athletes.
Yeah,
I wanted to take a time because Kerry hasn't said anything yet. Do you have the slide? Pop it up.
I do.
So
I do. I
Carrie
know
has
again.
something amazing. I know we have to wrap it up, but Carrie has a summer training program, and I'm super excited about it. Everything that Carrie's ever done with my Invincible Athlete program or anything else is so well organized, so well put together, and the information is like priceless. So she does have the team toolkit, which is awesome and something to really join into. But she also has a summer training bundle, and I dropped the link into the chat for those of you that are in. Sandra, if you want, if you just accept panelists, you can get the link in the chat. I cannot post it through the Q&A, so I'm going to promote you to panelists if you want it. So the link is in the chat for her summer training program. You can get $25 off with the promo Brandy, BRANDI 25. Number 25, Brandy 25 is your promo code. So Carrie, tell us a little bit more about the summer training bundle and
Yeah,
we'll finish up from there.
absolutely. I know. And I know, again, we've got a lot of coaches on here. So especially if this is the stuff we talked about today, you're either really recognizing in your athletes and your families. And again, we talked a little bit about, we don't want to just go out and blame and accuse, but if you're really recognizing some of these underfueling symptoms in your gymnasts and you're kind of chatting with the parents and saying, this is something I'm noticing. I'm curious if it could be a nutrition thing, or I want to make sure that they're adequately fueled to work hard this summer. I really wanted to put together a way to support gymnasts and their families this summer as they're kind of out of school. They have a little more time, a little more capacity to dive in to nutrition. So I've put together my summer training bundle, and this is going to be a really cool hybrid of one-on-one support with me. So families will get 3 one-on-one sessions with me so we can dive in, we can do a personalized nutrition assessment, we can optimize the meals and the snacks that they're eating and making sure that they're adequately fueled for their training, for their schedule, for everything that's getting thrown at them this summer, right? We'll be able to kind of fine tune that as they go through and then make sure that they have a smooth transition back to school. And then they'll also get access to my signature program, the Fueled Gymnast Academy, which has also just recently gone through a major, major upgrade. And I don't want to say overhaul, but it's got a ton new content, a lot more evidence-based research and information, and basically everything that gymnasts and parents need to know for that program. There are tracks for older gymnasts, younger gymnasts, and male gymnasts. I didn't forget about them. I did not leave them out. Um, so that is going on. Families can enroll in this program until May 18th. So if they're looking, that's what I've got coming up. I'll be out and about this summer as well. I'll be at some congresses, all that sort of good stuff too.
Thank you, Carrie, so much for coming in. If you guys get a chance to work with Carrie, she's amazing. I send athletes to her all the time, and she really has some great resources to use. So I've looked at her toolkit, and it's awesome. So Carrie, thank you again so much for coming in and
Yeah.
helping us get on point for off season. And you guys check out her training, the summer training bundle, as well as her team training toolkit. And then she's also got the field gymnast. All those things are great resources for you and your athletes and your families that you work with. Next week, anything else for us, Carrie, before I wrap us into next week?
I don't think so. Again,
Awesome.
I don't think it was up there, but I know Brandy always has my info, my contact. We kind of got a little bit off topic, but for joining today, I gave Brandy my summer training kind of fueling guide. So if you're thinking about that toolkit, it'll be a nice sneak peek because that is inside the toolkit, but I'm giving it to you guys today. But yeah, if you've got questions, you need anything, I'm always on Instagram. You can always send me a message. You can send me an email, and I'm always happy to chat and support you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kerry. Really appreciate having you here. Always, always such good information. Priceless. For everyone, thanks for joining. Keep your eye out because I also have something cool coming in the end of May, right after Kerry stuff in. So keep your eye out. There's some more excitement coming from Perfect 10 PT Academy. Next week for Blueprint for Peak Performance, we have Yuka Segoria from Level Up Neuro. We're going to do brain first, body follows, the secret to easier gymnastics. So stick your head in next week and we will see you all guys then. Kerry, again, thank you so much. It's been so wonderful to see you.